Okay. Welcome everyone. We're gonna start off playing some more Fortnite tonight. It's gonna be a shorter episode this time. I'm just gonna get a few games in, possibly 5, and then we'll call it a night. Alright, let's jump in. I was looking at the item shop here, and I'm considering getting this. This is, it's fun to listen to, is what it is. And I bet you couldn't hear me for the past little while. I like listening to this. This is a good emote. I'm considering getting it, but I don't know yet. I don't know, we'll see. Whoa. Alright, I'm excited. It's my first game on the day. I guess usually my first game isn't very good either. Yeah, I'm definitely not warmed up. Definitely need to maybe stretch out a little bit. Do some stretching. Alright, where do I want to go? I want to outlast opponents in solo mode, so that's what I'm definitely going to do then. I'm going to outlast opponents, so I need to go somewhere remote, is what I'm thinking. Somewhere that no one else is going to be. Somewhere I can hide and be safe. I go here, I guess. Let's go to Haunted Hills. Haunted Hills seems good. Put a marker on the map. That would be good. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Alright, let's do this. I'm gonna play until I get 10 kills. Play until I get 10 kills. And then I'll be done for the night. And that'll be good. No matter how long that takes. What's that? Oh, that's a vending machine. Somebody else is here. Great. Okay. Let's go get a weapon so I can take that guy on. Good. Where is he at? Alright, there's a launch pad. One of those things and one of those things. Honestly, let's take the launch pad. Alright. Scared. Because I don't know where that guy is. That's not what I want to do. That was dumb. Where is that guy? There he is. That was bad. Reload. Whoa! Reload. Nice! I don't know how I pulled that off, but I did. Alright. Alright, we're gonna heal up. And also pick up this pump shotgun. Alright, that's 1 kill. 1 kill on the day. One kill. 1 kill. Whew. Alright, so we're 1 kill in. I didn't even get to fire this thing. Oh, I must have looted this place pretty good then. There's another wall. Fantastic. So I don't know if you guys heard, but apparently Epic Games employees came out saying that their work environment wasn't very good. So hopefully they can maybe hire some more employees to get the job done. Like they were working them too hard. What's the deal? Why did that shoot so far up? You see how that circle shot so far up? Excellent. I don't know if there's anything in there. Just kind of. Oh, nice bullets. I reloaded this gun, so I don't need to switch out or anything. Let's go ahead and get some more bullets here. Okay, I think I'm going to be on my way here. There's usually a chest there, but there's not this time. Looks like there's a vending machine there. That could come in handy. Ooh, nice. Go ahead and grab that. Chest. Yes, please. Is there a campfire around here, though? Let's just check real quick. Sometimes there is. No, I'm not seeing one. I'll bring the bandages with me, maybe. Let's go see what's over here, I guess. So I know there's. If I can make it to Snobby Shores. Fine. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and drink it, I guess. Not hitting the. There, that's a nice gun. If I didn't get the big, cool shotgun. Nice. I don't have much time to do this, so I'll do this quickly. More bandages. Okay, excellent. I'm out of here. I'm gonna have to go up the mountain. Guess we don't have to, but it's nice. Oh. Interesting. Chest. Oh, we don't have time. No, we can't go up this mountain anyway. Because it would be worth it because we'd have to come back down it. Shield. Get that. Oh, there's 3 more. Is it worth it? I think so. Oh, there's another one. Must get shield. Okay. We're out of here. Let's go. That worked out pretty well. Some ammo here. Guess I could get it. Yep. We really don't have that far to go. But traveling fast is nice. And there's a guy there. Great. Oh, he saw me. Go ahead and switch that out. And let's see here. Okay, we'll take that. What else we got? What else we got? We got shields and a rift to go. Rift to go would be so useful. I don't know. Do I want to take the rift to go or do I want to take the shield? Gotta take the shield, right? Maybe I could use the rift to go and then take the shield. Seemed like the good idea, the best option. Need to worry. No need to fret. Don't worry about a thing. There's a guy right there, and he doesn't know I'm here. Oh, I missed. Darn it again. How did I miss that again? Okay, I rebuild. Where's that guy at? How did I miss that again? Not very good at this. What the heck? Oh, how is he doing that? Not what I wanted. Darn it, how did I miss that? It's annoying. Where even is he? Why is he all the way up there? It's like... I can't see him. That's right, okay. Oh, dang it. Man. No. Okay. Oh, he had one of those things. Alright, let's reload this. What's that guy doing? There he is. Oh, good. There he is. Somebody said. Alright. You can snipe that. Oh, shoot. Okay, cool. I also need to put that down. Oh no. Not what I wanted. Put this down. I just need to get somewhere safe. Somewhere out of line of sight. Darn it, somebody's over there. Oh, I used the thing. Ah, dang it. I just gotta reload everything then. Okay, everything's reloaded. I'm not getting any more health. Honestly, I just need to hope there's something good in that supply drop. Like a rip to go. Be the best. Just better hurry up. I don't have much time left before I gotta start running. Alright, anything, any healing, anything. Okay, better drink this. Okay, and then a minigun would definitely come in handy. Come on, minigun. Oh, come on. No, no, no. Okay, let's go. Get a run. Oh, I do have another launch pad if I need it. Might as well quick just use one. There's a huge build battle going on up there. See if there's any healing in here. Yeah. Would that be useful? Should I just replace that with the minigun? I don't know. Yeah, I gotta use that. I gotta just not take the minigun. Hopefully I don't regret it. Well, I'm gonna replace that with the minigun. That could be a stupid thing, but... Let's see what we got here. Nothing that great. This guy up there. Can't believe I missed. Ah! Ah! Man. Maybe I shouldn't have switched with the minigun. Somebody else is right here too. Whew. Okay, 3 kills though. We could watch and see what happens with this. Whoa. Maybe I should have kept that. No one's good at the minigun. See what this guy does. Missed the thing. Where is that other guy? The guy's gotta be hiding somewhere. He doesn't even have, like... He's got lighter redeploy too, so... I think that was his own build that he's looking at right now. That guy's probably inside the building there, in all honesty. I mean, he's got the advantage hardcore right now because he's above everybody. And he's, you know, he's got a lighter redeploy, so he doesn't food. You could just use that. He's still got to be in the building, right? Oh, there he is. He's struggling to get out of the storm. He's probably hurt. Yeah, that's kind of trying to get trick shots. Better be careful though, he might. Oh, he's gonna die this time. Maybe not. Oh, we got this. Let's see how much. That was a good game. There's 7 more to go. 7 more to go. So I have to, so for the one challenge that I'm doing, it's the stay alive past for, or outlive 150 people. So I got 90 of it, so 60 people left. So I just need to get it down to 35 people remaining, and then I get that one challenge done. And then all the other challenges just rely on me playing with a friend. So I need to get a friend to play. Where would be somewhere would be good? Let's go to Feed the Fields. Seems like a plan to me. Thanks to the bus driver. And we used to, when we used to do football, we used to sing that. It's the thank you, Mr. Bus Driver. And it's like a nursery rhyme, or based off of it. I don't know if everyone did this or just us, but it was like, thank you, Mr. Bus Driver, bus driver, bus driver. Let me do that in a different key. Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver, bus driver, bus driver. Thank you, Mr. Bus Driver, bus driver. Yeah. Now, I'm trying to think of the nursery rhyme that goes to. And I can't put my finger on it. It'll come to me. I think it will come to me. Even if it isn't tonight, it will come to me eventually. Nice. I'm lucky to get. That's a fantastic drop. Now, if only there's somebody here I can use this on. Fortnite is a good concept. Like, I love the idea. So, like, when Fortnite was sort of new, it was like already out for like half a year. My friend introduced it to me because I didn't have a PlayStation at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, there's a new game called Fortnite." And I'm like, "Okay, what is it?" And he's telling me about it. He's like, okay, you go like, there's this island, you don't have a gun, but you can drop on this island, and you have to like survive, right? If you die, you're out. And then you need to like keep moving, and then like because people are so spread out, there's like a storm that you have to avoid that keeps moving in and in and in. And I just thought that was like the coolest idea. Just talking about it was very cool, and then I started playing it because I downloaded it on my little laptop that I had that really wasn't made for any gaming or anything, barely hand Fortnite. Is he driving away from me or towards me? Away. And I started playing on that, and originally I started playing with an Xbox controller, you know, like connected to your computer, and it was pretty fun. Just like I miss like when we first started, we're like, oh man, we got to like 10th place or whatever. That was like huge. Our first Fortnite win like was like so incredible. It wasn't anything special. Like, it literally was just like us getting lucky, waiting till the end, and then like taking down the last guy because the team was weak. That's what you gotta do sometimes though for the win. But it was like, yes, let's go. I feel like enough people have won. It's getting old now. So many updates. Fortnite, like, definitely through season 7 was the worst. I stopped playing Fortnite for a while because of how bad it was. But season 8 got a little bit better. I still think they should add the like health on kills back, but other than that, I mean, it's a fun game. And then also like the resources, so you get more resources for farming, because otherwise farming's kind of annoying. Like, I feel like I've been farming, quite I've been farming a lot. Like I'm doing it enough now where I should have a decent amount, and I really don't. There's a chest in there, I'm gonna grab that. I'm just gonna go in the, let's see, air geyser thing. I don't see anything around. Yes! Now I just need some shield, and I'll be happy. Do you know why it's exciting to see this wood just sitting here? Because I don't have to farm it. That's how bad farming is on the game. I don't know if I like this orange thing that I got here. I think I need to definitely practice at my snipes again, because I don't know if you remember from the last game, but I missed a few. Alright, there's some bandages, but not really what I need. That actually helped me a lot though with as far as materials go. There's some shield. I don't know if I should drink it right away or if I should hang on to it. Drink it right away. Some stuff there. Did I miss that? Oh, that's the stuff I. Duh. Alright, I got a minute to make it there. Considering I'm doing about 4 or 5 meters per second, it's 200 divided by 5, which is 40, so 40 seconds. I should be able to make it, because I have more than 40 seconds left. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Now what'd I tell you? Told you we could make it. Just need a little bit more shield, and we're gonna be continue running. I don't know if I want to grab that, whatever. I hate not having that, but let's see if I get that supply drop on the way. Actually, if I go over here though, I'm getting the cannon or a geyser or something. Get a little faster. Because honestly, I don't think I'm gonna make that the amount of time we got. Make that distance. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen, okay? It's just not. Grab a few of those. And you'll see if I can work on that. Do I want to even go up there then? I mean, the geyser's all the way. All the way across the way. Isn't it over here somewhere? Yeah, there it is. Is it even worth going to get? I don't think so. I don't think we're gonna make it in time. Well, I guess we still have. It isn't even started to shrink yet, I guess. So there is a vehicle over there. Do I dare go get it though? This guy left a ton of stuff for me here. Got a treasure chest? Do I dare take the treasure chest? Where's it at? I don't want to take the treasure chest. Oh, but I will take that. Nope, not that. This. Somebody got that supply drop across the way. I don't run into anybody. There's a guy up there. Probably head on to that. That's not really what I meant to do. There was something here. Definitely taking. There's a guy over there. Just hopping along. Why is he doing that? Alright, I'm gonna take the shield potions. Let's see where they go. They're there. And it's just one. Better than nothing though. Okay, I definitely know there's a guy over there. I'm gonna watch my back here. Make sure nobody's coming. Now watch that guy. There he is. There's a guy right there. And I missed. Make sure no one's coming out of the storm or something. Nice. What's that guy doing? Oh, I didn't build. Fantastic. come in handy. Oh, who's shooting at him? He's also shooting at him. That's fun. That hurt a lot. I have to remember that med kit. Was he above me? Yep. Where you at? Nope. Ah! Oh, how much health did he have? I could have got him, probably. Probably. But I didn't. I think what it was, so I decided I'm not going to get this because if they bring back where you get health per kill, I would buy this. Or I would. But not right now. Right now I'm going to move off. This is an excellent loadout. Alright. Nice. Oh, 15. Okay, now I just gotta go for kills. Let's go to Pleasant Park. Remember, I had 7 more. 7 more. And I'll be done. 7 more. 7 more kills and that'll be... Oh, no, I can't hear you. Land in my house? Nope. Doesn't look like there's a guy in the house next to me either. Okay, let's drink this. Put that in my long slot. Get some ammo. Okay. Some fight going on already somehow. Trap I could use. I think I'm using trap more than anything else. Just ammo. There's nothing here. Alright. Let's get back in the house. Okay, nothing. And some bandages. Alright, good enough. Let's go to this house that no one went to. Theory. Something a little bit more close range, hopefully. Yeah, that'll be good. Anything up here? No. It's faster just to cut my way down, I think. Shotgun, that'd be good. And then this chest, 2 chests, wow. Cannon. 3 chests? Are you kidding me? Nice. Excellent. Go ahead and go like that then. And then I'll go see if I can get a kill then. Alright, I am prepared to do just about anything now. Alright, where are you at? Where they at? Somebody must have won. Somebody must be here. There's fighting going on all over the place here. Why can't I see nobody? Thought I saw something, but that wasn't the person. Oh wait. It's 75 damage. I could have done better on that. Could have done better. Just gotta get a little bit faster on the draw. I wonder if I want to do well, because then. I don't know. It's fine. He was a YouTuber, so they're good. YouTubers are good. He was well played. He had the high ground. I need to just talk myself through it. I think just like, all right, you got to get the high ground here. You got the high ground, and then you go for the kill. You know, it's like boom, boom. Try it again. Go play the park again. And watch him down. Ton of people here. Where are you guys going? Alright, I'll land right here. This time I won't Because this house has better loot. Somebody landed here. There's a guy in there. Alright, let's go get that guy. Oh, oh. That could have went a lot better. It's embarrassing, to be honest. I wonder what I'm missing here, if it's making any rational. Maybe I'm just like in a crouched position here. So I need to like fully get oxygen so I can perform at a higher level. That's obviously it. Look at that. Headshot. 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 Yep, that was it. That was the reasoning. It was just awkward sitting. Okay, let's try now with my good sitting. Okay, and my mouse is now not working for some reason. Why is my mouse not working? There it goes. Okay. That was a little scary. Alright, here we go. I can feel the focus. Here. Alright, that counts as a kill. It's kind of a cheap one. And I missed half the shots. Nice minigun. Good shotgun, I'll take them both. So many different doors. Here, chest. It's over here somewhere. I don't know where it is. Oh, I see. I didn't even look here. I just wanted to get that kill. Fantastic. Just go like that. Okay. Anyone else want some? Do I want? Yes. There's more kills this time. Go after. Maybe I just gotta think about what I'm doing before I do it. So next, I'm going to go into the shack here and loot, watching out for people. And I hear it just. I gotta switch out with that one. Looting. Do I see a chest? No chest. Of course, the glider redeploy will definitely come in handy. But what do I give up for that? I really can't. Might as well get rid of my sniper, to be honest. Sure, it helps. And I might lose the stream here because the internet's not doing good. I might lose the stream for this. Make sure we're doing good on the stream. It says we're still good. It says we're look, now it's really getting bad. I don't like how bad the internet's getting so far. Hopefully it gets better. Now it's getting bad again. What the heck? Why are you doing this, internet? What's your deal? Alright, cool. Good to go. I think that's gonna destroy the whole thing, right? Yep. Sweet. Nice. Yeah. Alright, so for those of you that are watching the stream post after it's live recorded, you may skip ahead 2 minutes because it's just going to be a lot of me just sitting around and waiting. Because I'm going to try to go for the win, I guess, this time. Oh, no, can't do it. Can't wait for the Lord. I don't really know what kind of rotation I would. I mean, I'm in the circle, so I'm safe for the next minute. Oh, fantastic. So for those of you who are just joining us, because I told you to skip ahead 2 minutes, I actually didn't wait that long. I started working my way around, and farming a little bit, so... you didn't miss anything though, just mainly farming. Now I have to try to make my way. Yeah. And try to get in the circle. Looks like somebody already got that. Nope, maybe not. Oh, there's a bridge. I'll get this material here. There is a vehicle up there, but I don't need a vehicle. Cars up. Pretty much going to be running the entire time. You can probably skip ahead a good, I'd say, a good, probably minute and a half. Stop farming. Just get to. Okay, I got about a minute and a half to get there. Not actually going the right way right now. If I could get onto one of those zip lines. If I can get on a zip line or something, so I can get to the high ground. Find this tree real quick here. Okay, cool. Alright, we're in a good position. Yeah, we're in a good position. See if there's anything in here too right away. There is. And a baller. Oh, is there, whoop, that's not bad. Well, kind of hurt to look at this. Okay, let's go. Now I got a baller and a redeploy. So I'm feeling pretty good. Hopefully there's no one here. There was some building there. There's a guy right over there. I don't really want to deal with him right now. Maybe I'll get to the high ground and then deal with him. Darn it. And I lost my baller now. Well, the good news. Oh, you took my baller. And I missed. Okay. Oh! Not good. Stupid reminder thing came up. Well, I did get a kill, so that's 6 more kills I gotta get. What is going on here? Like, minimize now. Low texture buildings. What I'm gonna do. Excuse me. I'm actually gonna play in high definition for a while. Why is it windowed? That's gonna keep the settings. Epic, 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 epic. Amazing. Whoa. It's like everything is like a little bit delayed. Look at how pretty that is. There's like a slight delay on everything though. Whoa, it's kind of weird. You can see everything. Kind of cool. I'm glowing. You realize that they could glow? Yeah, everything seems delayed, but man, is it cool. Going for this guy. And he's going for it. No. I should have went for the trap on that. I'm not gonna get it. It's like no delay. It's like weird. I don't know how much longer you can do it on this like high settings. What if I change it to like you can only do let's try that. I'm gonna do the end game challenges too. Especially the collect infinity stones one. Yeah, this is like kind of late for me. It's like weird. Let's see, how can I do this here? Okay. If I don't get a kill this time, this is my last time doing it with high quality because it's like really hard. Let's see, there is a weapon. Dude, you can get that shotgun for me. Oh, I got a tree. Oh, nope, that's not gonna work. Nope, 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 nope. Nope, 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 nope. I'll do it again. Oh, no. I hit him though. I hit him. What if I do it like slightly higher quality but not fully? You know what I'm saying? So like if I go like medium game. So let's see if I can do this here. So we go medium quality. It's not bad, right? And it still looks prettier. kill there. I don't like it when I can't see any guns. There's a shotgun right down here. I'm never sure if I should have a keyboard. I'm sure I should have a keyboard. I guess I kind of like this too. Alright, watch this. Yeah. Oh. That's how you do it. Alright, slurp juice, I'm gonna drink that right away. And then pretty far from us. Oh. Where you at, buddy? Oh, he's not very good. But neither am I, unfortunately. Oh, he had a good shotgun. I'm wood already. Struggling so bad. That was kill number 5. I don't even have like a... Well, that would have been cool. Well, so much for that. I don't know if you can tell, but I don't usually use those. So I don't have anything like short range. I don't need 2 hunting rifles though either. I don't know. Last time I used Glide Replay 2 and this was a tree. It's not. Alright, there's 2 big shields. I'm gonna switch them out. Oddly familiar because I'm gonna go get that assault rifle, and that's exactly what I did last time I got Glide Replay. There is a thing inside here. Maybe not that specific thing, but this one. just give me enough to like make it so it's worth getting. Should I go get that rift? What? Yeah, I built into the ground. Hopefully the guy that's watching me is gonna go check me out on YouTube. Alright, and we're off. And there's a guy over there. Yes, please. I don't think he sees me yet. And I can't hit him for nothing. That's bad grammar. Ah! That idiot. Oh, now you're out of protection there, buddy. Ha. Oh. Okay, the storm's coming. So I don't have time for this. Might as well take. Oh, there's no ammo for this. Okay, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. No, darn it! Alright, I can definitely restock on health in a moment. There was a camper over there. Alright. Oh, there's health. Alright, let's just go here and see what the chest has. Oh, it's on top. Let's get more ammo. Okay, nothing. I need to get to this shack. I'll say though that could be useful too. Just need to get somewhere more safe-ish, so I can. Oh, there's a guy. There's a guy. He's just running along, doing his business. Yeah, that's. Shoot. How far do I have to go? Pretty far. I just need something to heal me. Something to heal me. Oh, you're not something to heal me? Oh, there's a guy there. Okay, he didn't have anything. Let's grab his stuff and go then. Okay, there's an apple, I guess. How much did he have? 52, nice. I guess they're using my wood here. Alright, I just gotta go. There is maybe a... Over here, I guess there would be... I don't think there'd be a... I really just... I can't hit the... Can't hit the ground. Or can't... Wait, what am I saying here? Ah, there's a campfire there, though. Alright, let's see what we got here. Oh, nothing. Oh, yeah, you gotta take that. Okay, come on. I think there's another chest down here, too. Oh, bandages, yes. Sweet, sweet. Okay. This might be so worth it. Because then I can just find a campfire, maybe. This is the last one I can use, I think. Yeah. The high ground. That guy died. Alright. I don't have an assault rifle anymore. Some shield. My shield potions. Just one, right? Yeah, not worth it. No. I don't know if I'm running faster than it or not. I know there's a guy up there. Gotta be careful there. I know there's a campfire ready for here, right? Oh, no. No. Here's a campfire right here. Take it for one or for two. This doesn't matter. At least. Is it worth getting this stuff? I don't know. I don't even know. No, it's not worth getting anymore. Just holding me at that. I gotta build up. Gotta go. Just has to be. There's some guy right there. Missed. Is that guy building or what's he doing? There's gotta be some kind of healing. Not what I wanted though. Here we go. Great. I have no idea where he went. Alright, I'm just gonna have to. Yeah. Have to go with that. Oh. Healing. There's some bandages over there. Oh, I gotta go quick. So we're dropping this though? I only have 4 left, I guess. So. I dropped some stuff over there, but it's not worth getting. This is all for one health. Okay. Gotta reload this. Don't have the lighter to play anymore. Says ammo. So there's a chest there, is it worth getting though? I'm just gonna rotate early. Really don't have any. Where's that medkit? Yes. Some shooting going on over there. guy way up there. Man, I don't like the look of this. Alright, well, I'm in the circle. Should have maybe made this a little bit more. It's too far away. Some fighting going on over there. I don't see him there. There's a baller over there. Nice. Alright, I'm gonna go get the... Darn it! Didn't want to build. We're gonna go get first dibs here. You can go one more high, I think. I got that reloaded, this reloaded, that reloaded. Alright, top four. Top four. I've already taken 15 damage by accident. There's a guy over there. Guy in a baller. That guy has a rocket launcher. Oh, he's attached to stupid. Oh, poop, that actually hurt. Oh, there you go. Gotta do this. Where are you at? Ah! Not good, not good. Alright, so I got 4 kills. So that means we need 2 more. wondering if I should switch the what do I think? Like switch my key bindings to be where the submachine gun is like the key, and then like my shotgun still be over here. Honestly, I think I should try that. Why not first? Let me see if I switch these two. See what that does. Oh man, there's everybody. Ah! Who's above me? Oh. Well, I got the one kill. And I do like it. I just need one more kill, and then we are done. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Alright, keybinds. Weapon slot. Let's see. Yes, over there. There we go. Just need one more kill. You're ruining my tree. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to build my bridge. Oh, I still got time. I could complete my bridge yet. No. I don't care. There we go. Man, I keep going to Pleasant Park for whatever reason. This was not a good idea. Oh, he got me. No! Just need one more hit. That was a very smart move on his part, though. Like, he got me, and instead of, like, trying to reload and then go for me again, he just went for the swing. So... It was good. It was a good move, I suppose. Claps. Claps for him. Oh, you stole my gun. Oops. I didn't fall down, but there's my jigsaw thing. Alright, so as long as I get one kill though, this will be the last game. shifty shafts. How did he get like that much lower? Like, I want to know that. Let's see, there's a weapon here. Is that a good weapon? Somebody has a shotgun already. Where you at? There he is. Nope. What? It's alright. We'll get there. And we're so close on the tiers here, too. Again, I wanted to get to 100 by this weekend. So I have tonight, which I'm almost done here tonight, but then tomorrow. And tomorrow I should be able to get another one, so that'd be like tier, 2 tiers. I should be able to get this done. That'll be another tier. And then I'll get that. Oh, but you know what? It's going to be very close because that's like 4 tiers. 4 tiers that I would get. And I need 5. So unless I like get it from like the experience I'm getting, which you know I could. I definitely could in theory. It's still my goal though. Maybe I should just go for the, well no, it's the soccer skin here. This guy doesn't look like he's won since season 6, so let's go for the kill. No. I couldn't turn around fast enough. I'm supposed to like raise my sensitivity. I don't want to, because if I do that, then I know I'm gonna stink. Well, let me like see if I can like set it to like where I can try it out. Let's see here. So if we have 2 number of levels here. Let's try like 600. So it's still. See what that looks like. It's definitely different. Of course, I am hitting all my shots, so I'm gonna be playing shot everything. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. It's definitely a lot faster. I don't know. Could be okay. Let's go shifty shafts again. I think now that I know it's just 1 kill, I'm like destroying it too quickly. And I'm not getting any kills. Okay. Look at all those people going to the towers. It's like nuts. Alright, somebody's landing. So no skin. No, he's not. Well, he has a good glider though. Okay. Buddy. Nice. What did I say I'm doing now? I'm keeping that the same. And now it's with C that I used to do that. Oh, there's more here. I don't know. I mean, I like the higher sensitivity, but it's just that sometimes my shots aren't as accurate. See, I'm overshooting it already. Let's see here. Let's switch out this good bad boy. I don't know. I'm just trying this new sensitivity out. We'll see how this works. How it works. I don't know, it feels kind of like uncontrolled with this high sensitivity. Of course, if I get good at it, then, you know, it could be a different story. Honestly, though, this is all getting very optimized. Alright, so I'm not planning on reloading my shotgun from that misfire there. If I run out, if I have to, like, if I die because I have to reload, then I'm gonna be angry. Oh, there it is. Buddy. Where are you going? I will take that, and I will take this. Alright, there we go. There's a little bit. Now, why do I have a little health gone? Because I had that battle with that guy. If you can call it a battle. It was kind of just a... tussle, I guess you call it. Oh, I'm in the circle. I don't know where I'm going. Where's that baller going then? I was right here. He heard me shooting at him. I mean, if he was either going to hide or he was going to fight somebody, and if he was going to fight somebody, I guess he could have been like creating a battle that happened, maybe. But either way, that is not the gun I wanted. No. Are you kidding me? Shot him how many times? You gotta be kidding me. Alright, we're gonna do it again. We're gonna play time. But I can quit anytime I want to because I got my 10 kills. Doesn't seem think anyone wanted to play anything tonight, and everything is dead. Fantastic. It says I'm still recording, so interesting. Okay. I don't know why it does this. It just like completely stops. Can't move. I'm not getting any downloads. Okay. And we're going. Alright, let's do one last game where we try to get like a really high placement. Unless somebody lands it with this. In which case, do you have a shotgun? I've actually gotten good at this. There is somebody below me. I know this. Oh wait, no, that scared me a little bit. Okay, excellent. Now I can finish looting in peace here. And again, we're going for high placement. If I get within top 10, this would be my last game. It's too bad that nobody watches. I'm decent at this game. I just got 2 kills. I mean, I think what I'm gonna have to do is just like, I don't know what I'm gonna have to do. Somebody was there at one point. Which means, oh, then they went that way. They're long gone. I do like that volcano in the background. I feel like the volcano is too. It's a good idea, but it's too big. It's like, it's too buggy. At least with like the. With it being so big, like even that big ice. I guess that's okay because it's like for the Earth. It's mainly problem I have with it is the fact that like when you like go in it, the gliders reapply. So it's kind of like awkward sometimes. Well, that's right. I was just trying to go there. That would be the easiest. Then I could keep my baller. Far from the circle, though. I gotta get more materials. So right now, don't have enough. Let's park the ball right here. Go get this. And go get this tree. And this. This. Oh, somebody should. Yeah. Some shooting going on. Built right there. Curious. There he is. That is the wrong gun. But he heard me, so I have to get used to this new keybinds. I think it's time for me to be done because I can't think of the words anymore. Either that or I'm too focused. One or the other. There's a guy over there. I don't feel like engaging right now. He's gonna wreck my ball. Let's go ahead and get in a better state. What? That is an amazing shot. Oh no. No. Uh-oh. Is that somebody? No. That's just their stuff. Somebody's here. Excellent. Full on wood. Fantastic. Let's more of this. And by this I mean stone. Actually, I bet you it's gonna be another baller on the pirate ship. There's the ballers. Here. Fantastic. There. Excellent. That's not what I meant to do. Alright, made top 10, so this is it. This is the one. This is the ultimate. Ultimate game. Surprised that I don't see anybody. They could definitely fly in. At any point I thought I saw someone over there, but yep, I totally did. So there's a guy over there. I don't have a sniper though, so can't do much about that. Just probably went for the high route. There's a guy over there too coming in. Okay, reloading. I don't even know what he had over there. Probably nothing good. Look at his stuff. Oh, what? I thought I opened this. Oh, that's why. I gotta move anyway, so I can look at his stuff. Hey, do you have anything good? go into territory I'm not sure about. Get to now. Somebody's watching me. I don't like all these trees here. Jump fatigue. Best time for doing that. There's only 4 people left too. Oh. Right, that's the wrong button. They're way over there. I mean, honestly though, you might as well just build up in here. I had to read a play. Oh, I gotta go the long way. Alright. Ah! Nope, not what I wanted. Nope, not what I wanted. Come on. Can't where you're at. Oh! Poop. I hit him though. I hit him. Oh, he's level 100. He's got that was pretty good though. It was top 3. I watched the end of it, I guess. I do not like the noise of that pickaxe. I don't like that at all. What do my stats look like? Pretty good. Oh, that guy's not very good, is he? I wish he would stop changing to his pickaxe. That's the most annoying thing. Well, this is a good match. At 20% in my accuracy. I gathered that many materials and only use that many. Well, that was good. Ooh. Oh, okay, it goes along with that. Wait a minute, what was... Thank you all so much for watching. We will see you guys all in the next one. Bye.